Troop 2237 presents Those Magnificent Austen Women and Others by David London.
Ladies and gentlemen, I do trust you are all enjoying this lovely day here at Ravenswood. I raise my glass in your honor.
Here!
If you didn't get to sample my Baker Hand's fabulous dessert, do not lose heart, for there may indeed be another opportunity to rap its cane upon your gate. There is but a single slice of black forest cake remaining.
I rise to claim the dessert, Mr. Browning, and I will be requiring your help to consume it.
I will not proffer my dessert quite that easily, Mr. Wedgeworth.
But I'm so deserving and on my feet for it, Mr. Browning.
I propose an after-luncheon entertainment, a contest, if you will, with the final portion of Black Forest Cake a prize for the winner. What say you? Are you up for the game? Well, despite your tepid enthusiasm, we shall proceed. I have noted the abundance of talents and accomplishments among our fairer class here in Mulberry. So much so, I felt we as a society are compelled to recognize them. May I present some of those magnificent Mulberry women? Some time ago, I began to question the way our society treats our fairer sex. I am aware the way we conduct ourselves is not likely to change anytime soon. However, we feel it necessary to make you aware of the need, because we would describe some women as
intelligent, witty, compassionate, resilient, elegant, graceful.
a superb list, ladies. Mr. Wedgeworth, what would you add to that? Wedgeworth! That is precisely what I speak.
Sorry. Lovely. Attractive. Winsome.
Yes, well, we may require a few more generations to overcome the Wedgeworths of our society. Perhaps we should continue with our presentation and our points may become clearer. I have a female friend who is simply an astonishing storyteller. The women I have introduced to you, and the stories I have taken and woven into a sort of play, if you will, for today's entertainment. Some of you may be drafted into performing. Please cooperate. In case you have forgotten your lessons for behavior in proper society, our first story, led by Miss Abigail Danbury, will attempt to enlighten you on the finer points of how women are subjugated today.
Taking a cue directly from our charming host, we all understand that there are rules to follow in good society. They may not be written down, but we all know what they are. I am performing a play based on a story entitled Sense and Sensibility, and within it we will examine society's mores and how they affect all that we do. I present to the family. Mrs. Dashwood. Miss Dashwood. Eleanor. Oh, that's me. Rule number 1. I am presented as Miss Dashwood because I'm the oldest daughter, while my youngest sisters...
Miss Marianne Dashwood.
Rule number 2.
Addressing me, including my given name, distinguishes me as a younger member of the family. Rule number 3. Women courtesy when being presented. Miss Margaret Dashwood, age 12. Oh, and men bow. I believe they should get down on their knees to us.
Margaret, behave.
Yes, this is perhaps the saying children should be seen but not heard became a rule.
Our story begins when my dear husband died, leaving us, his second family, essentially out in the cold, and the one surviving son from his first marriage his heir. I'm not bitter. Really. Now, despite living in these modern, enlightened times, we suffer from rule number 4, the inequality of women.
We live in a time when men are men, and women know their place.
Yeah.
For shame! Rule number 5. Massive wealth and estates pass from father to sons, rarely, if ever, to daughters. The inequality of women.
Yeah.
For shame.
So, there we all are, happily living on Norland, our father's beautiful estate, when the moving bands arrived with our half-brother John, last will and testament firmly in hand to throw us into the street.
We were left £500 each, barely enough to starve on. But on his deathbed, father asked Brother John to take care of us.
I believe John had every intention of honoring Charles's wishes. That is until his wife Fanny got hold of the plan.
Hateful woman.
My dear Fanny, I must honor my father's last request. I will give them each an additional £500.
£2,000. If your father had been in his right senses, would he have expected you to give away half such an enormous sum?
Well, he did not stipulate any sum, but the promise was given and must be performed.
When they finally move out of our Norland, we'll send them a gift for the cottage by the sea. But £2,000. Consider your sisters will marry, hopefully one day, and the money will be gone from us forever.
Perhaps it would be better for all parties if the sum were diminished by half. £1,000 would be a prodigious increase to their fortunes.
What brother on earth would do half as much for his full-blooded sisters?
One would rather do too much than too little. They can hardly expect more.
But you should not think of their expectations. The question is, what can you afford to do? And if they marry, they'll be well taken care of.
Perhaps then it would be better to do something for their mother while she lives. Something of an annuity, 100 a year, say?
Yes. To be sure, it is better than parting with £1,000 at once. But if Mrs. Dashwood should live 15 years, or worse 20, we should be completely taken in.
My dear Fanny, is that possible?
People always live forever when there's an annuity to have paid them.
Yes, and she is a healthy 40. An unpleasant thing to have that kind of drain on one's income.
If I were you, whatever is done should be at my own discretion.
A present of £50 now and then will prevent their ever being distressed for money, and will discharge me of my promise.
Indeed. To say the truth, I'm convinced your father had no idea of your giving them money at all. By taking care of them, he likely meant for you to help move their things out of Norland, sending them presents of game and fish and so forth when they're in season.
I believe you're perfectly right, Fanny dear. My father could mean nothing more by his request than for me to check up on them now and again and to send them a kindness basket of fruits and vegetables.
When they're in season? I mean, really, John, how large is your Bruges?
I'm not really certain. So, that is it then. Done.
Rule number 6. Expect nothing that isn't in writing and signed. Fanny and John moved in and we looked for a place to move to. Meanwhile, I fell in love with Fanny's brother, Edward Ferrars, who had come to visit them. I discovered rule number 7. Do not fall in love with an imprudent match. Fanny, having it in for us already, warned my mother Edward was expected to inherit his own fortune and to marry a woman of similar status. What none of them seemed to know was that Edward had every intention of standing for the clergy, a profession that had little value to his mother.
Rule number 8. Know when good society wishes you to leave. We moved out my dead husband's estate and into a simple seaside cottage in Devonshire. Accepting presents from cousin John Middleton meant exposing the girls to his mother-in-law, Mrs. Jennings.
Rule number 9. All older women believe that all younger women should be settled by 16 or 17 years of age, or risk being declared an old maid.
Mrs. Dashwood, I'm afraid that there are not many young men about in this part of Devonshire, but I guarantee to have your 3 girls settled by the end of the year.
But, Mrs. Jennings, my Margaret is not yet 13.
Mrs. Jennings, it is never too early to settle a young lady. But perhaps we should begin with your older girls. Let us see. There's Colonel Brandon, lovely man, rich, handsome, and hopelessly in love with your Marianne.
Rule number 9. Never accept at first who you will eventually end up with.
Oh, but Mother, Brandon is so ancient and dull. He has no sensibility.
My dear Miss Jennings, Marianne is lovely. She plays the pianoforte brilliantly. I'm enchanted with her. I do have a large prosperous estate to offer her, but at the age of 35, would she ever entertain the idea of marrying me?
Oh, he's much better for you, Eleanor, being so dull and all. You would be perfect together. You've the sense to settle for the mundane match.
Yes, but I'm already in love with you-know-who, Marianne. Do not dare to be the word about Edward to anyone.
Well then, there's Willoughby. Handsome, rich, dashing, and young. A bit of liberty, we fear.
Yes, please, with hot sauce. Rule number 12. while walking in the rain, should you happen to fall and sprain an ankle, oh, be certain there's a handsome libertine around to carry you home.
Mr. Willoughby, what is your take on Colonel Brandon?
Brandon is the type of man whom all speak well about, but no one cares about, whom all are delighted to see, but none remember to talk to. Marianne, you are quite attractive and educated and well-read, and I could surely fall in love with you. But my auntie, who was going to give me her fortune, cut me out her will for a small indiscretion of mine.
Goodness, Willoughby, what did you do?
I had a bit of a fling with Colonel Brandon's ward, and she turned up in the family way. My auntie found out and threw me out, and I must get out.
Oh,
There is a well-endowed woman in London.
Busty?
No! £50,000 a year, and if I get there today, I may sweep her off her feet and marry her before she realizes what a cad I am.
Love is trumped by a dowry of £50,000 per year.
In the end, through a series of events, Marianne discovered Colonel Brandon to be a decent bloke with his own fortune, and he was very much in love with Marianne.
A young lady with no fortune of her own has little alternative than to settle for a decent match. And, in her case, Brendan, however dull, was much superior to a life of spinsterhood in a distant relative's seaside cottage.
As for my situation, it was simply steeped in mystery for much of the time of our story.
Dearest Eleanor, you're obviously in love with Edward Ferrers, and he is in love with you. Do you yet have an understanding? Is it all settled?
Every time Edward comes to visit us here, I think he's one step away from dropping to one knee, and then...
Yes, dear sister?
He seems to get called away. His mother, his studies, and then there's that wretched Lucy Steele.
Oh, good God. Who in the devil is Miss Lucy Steele, may I ask?
Well, to hear Miss Steele tell it, they have been secretly engaged for 4 years, but no one, including his dear mother, has been informed of the pending nuptials. Edward never stays long enough so that I cannot confirm the situation one way or the other. Poor Edward.
I'd say better, poor Eleanor.
If he has made this commitment to Lucy Steele, there is nothing that could make him back out of it.
Poor Edward.
Indeed. However, if Mama Ferrers does not accept Lucy as a potential wife for Edward...
Poor Lucy.
Yes, but frankly, we do not give a damn about her. What will probably happen is Mama will obviously reject Lucy, and Edward, unable to break his vow because he is too good, will give up his family fortune and believe Miss Steele to accept the life of a poor clergyman and live like a pauper.
Oh, goodness, I forgot to tell you. Brendan has a very good living on his estate, and he wishes to offer Edward so that he and Lucy do not have to live like church mice.
Which brings us back to...
Oh, poor Eleanor, I'm so sorry.
Wait a minute. Who says Lucy will accept Edward's son's fortune?
Well, it doesn't seem likely. I don't think anyone ever marries for love. I guess that's where the saying, you can't live on love came from. You can't blame a girl for wanting the best settlement she can get.
And you've got a little sister and a man who loves you very much.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it'd be rule number 14.
A woman never ends up with the man she starts out in love with. Guess what? We've reached the end of our story and I'm still in love with Edward, the gentleman whom I loved from the very beginning. Poor Eleanor.
I am Edward Ferrers, the much mentioned but not seen until now hero of this story, to save Eleanor from being poor. Although you are not of 25, it is not too late for you to make a so-so settlement with a clergyman in possession of a good living. Miss Lucy Steele, who I, some years ago, made a poorly thought-out promise to, decided she was going to blurt out our secret engagement to, of all people, my mother, who promptly set upon her with an umbrella and tossed Miss Steele into the street. As you know, I'm the noble son of the Ferrers family. I had to follow her. My mother, of course, disinherited me for my greedy brother, Robert, who Miss Steele announced was the one she really wanted to marry. And they, my 50,000 per year, were married and will surely live unhappily ever after.
Poor Robert and Lucy.
Ah, yes, indeed. But perhaps it'll be good for Eleanor if she can find love in her heart to settle with a moderately successful clergyman in possession of a steady living.
Well, Mother did insist upon rule number 15, that I make a good settlement by the end of the year in order to make Mrs. Jennings a happy woman and to continue to support them at least until they find a match for young Margaret. In our society, to avoid life as a poor spinster and being a drain on their family, it is essential that a woman make a good settlement as soon as humanly possible. Love, so often not necessary. Marianne and I were among the lucky ones to achieve both. I suppose a better title for our story might be Sense, Sensibility, and Settlements.
I must say, Miss Danbury has certainly set a high mark for the others to shoot for. Please welcome our next storyteller. This eerie, ghostly opening is ideal for the Gothic tale known as Northanger Abbey. Here to present it is a lovely young ghoul named Miss Amanda Morgan.
A heroine in a Gothic tale must face jeopardy at the hands of a vile, eerie scoundrel and be saved by a gallant, heroic cavalier. Well, that certainly is a load of rubbish, representing what passes as literature currently, probably written by a man. No modern woman should ever be expected to play the role of the helpless damsel in distress, simply to soothe the ego of an obnoxious man. Did Emma not teach us anything, I ask you? Should a woman not stand firmly on her own 2 feet and battle such social inequities? My group refuses to go on with this ridiculous charade. And if you really want to know, we don't even care for that forest cake.
Regretfully, Miss Morgan seems to have left the building. She wasn't wrong. Northanger isn't fitting of the story we are telling.
Here, here. Our next story is much more fitting. Miss Eastwood, if you please.
Our heroine is different than the ones we have met thus far. She's older, for one, and in her youth allowed her family to act on their best interests, not her own. Anne had fallen in love with a Navy officer named Wentworth, who at the time was a mere lieutenant with little family fortune and limited prospects. Both my father, a handsome baronet, and his sister-in-law, my dear aunt, warned me of getting too close to the lieutenant.
My dear, as everyone can well see, I'm an extremely handsome man.
I failed to mention my father, the baronet, never met a mere he didn't like.
However, your mother and her family recognized I was a wealthy man with a position in society. Marriage to me would lead her to greatness.
And dear, since your good mother's recent passing, I feel the need to offer you some guidance in this matter. Be careful to guard your heart from growing too close to Lieutenant Wentworth. His prospects are, of course, limited, and we feel you should seek to do better.
Since I believe there may be some resistance to our settling, like a good game of cards, I play my true feelings close to the vest. However, I would have to act quickly or risk losing her.
I was terrified that Wentworth might soon ask me a question I would be forced to reject, or chance the scorn of my family. I decided I must put him off before he had the opportunity to proclaim anything.
Anne, dear.
Mr. Wentworth, you mustn't.
You mustn't what, my darling?
Ask me anything we may both live to regret.
I had no intention of...
Because my family, with my mother's passing, wished for me to stay close by home for a while, not form any long-term commitments. I'm sure you understand.
Of course.
After all, I am still rather young.
Oh, yes. And I'm due to set sail with a fleet to the West Indies very soon.
Really? I thought that voyage had been put off.
Back on. Most important, so... Well, you have your family. And I of His Majesty's fleet.
Yes, of course. We're both better off, I'm sure.
And so, although each was deeply in love, they parted ways for the last time. Some background to the family. Anne's deceased mother, the Lady Elliot,
met the handsome baronet. They married and were very much in love. They had 3 daughters in successive years. The eldest, Elizabeth, became the lady of the Kellynch estate after her mother's passing, while Mary, the youngest, married one Charles Musgrove. I must share this with you. Their marriage occurred at a time that Anne was still suffering from the loss of Wentworth. Who am I kidding? She continues to suffer, and that was 8 years ago. Musgrove proposed to Mary when, not but 2 weeks earlier, due to Wentworth, Anne had turned him down. To Musgrove, one sister was as good as the next. They're an odd family, I know, but they're all I've got. A drawing room on the Kellynch estate.
Bills. Elizabeth, my dear, what is a gentleman to do when one's expenditures outweigh one's income?
Living as a baronet is expensive, and you insist on hosting lavish dinner, hunting, and garden parties.
How else would one's neighbours know how wonderful our lives are, if not for our extravagancies?
If you wish to hold on to Kellynch, you must live more economically.
Easy enough for you to say. How do you suggest we accomplish that?
We let the estate and move to Bath, where we can live like kings for less than a baronet. We save enough, and after a year or 2, we move back. Admiral Croft is a kindly Navy admiral, willing to fork over oodles of cash for a temporary slice of good life. Let's come.
In the 8 years, Wentworth had risen to the rank of captain and amassed a great fortune. He was Mrs. Croft's brother and would surely be back to visit. In fact, he had taken up residence near Uppercross, and I feared that Anne would not be able to delay their meeting.
He's what? Oh, dear God! How can I ever face him after rejecting him?
And I thought that after 8 long years...
Not that long!
Oh, come now, he's probably all but forgotten you.
You think he has? Well, maybe. I don't remember him much.
Today we were all to move to Bath, and we heard from Mary that she was ailing.
I am so sick. I cannot possibly do without Anne.
Well, then Anne has better stay with you. No one will want her in Bath anyway. She'll come later when Lady Russell comes.
To the Uppercross estates. And I am not well.
I'm sorry to hear that. You sent me a good account of yourself on Thursday.
Yes, well, I made the best of it. I always do. But it's very far from well at the time. Charles is out shooting. I've seen nothing of him since 7 a.m. I've seen nothing of his sisters either. Dear Henrietta and Louisa. Out looking for husbands, I suppose. Too busy to look in on me. I could have dropped under the carpet and who would know?
Well, I am here now, and if you do, I will know. I shall see you right as rain.
Oh, I nearly forgot. Guess who Charles is out shooting with today? Captain Wentworth. He's recently returned to the country, bringing with him a tidy fortune, I understand, that he made during the recent war.
Yes, I do believe I met him once, but I was very young when he lived here.
Yes, I was never acquainted either, but he is the brother of Mrs. Croft, father's lieutenant, and he is clearly a gentleman of means. So, I introduced him to Henrietta and Louisa, and I'm certain he'll be engaged to one of them within a fortnight, if they have anything to say about it.
Charming!
All you have to do is avoid being in Captain Wentworth's presence for a month before we go off to Bath.
Try to avoid being in his presence? How did you expect me to pull that off for a month?
This too shall pass, dear Anne.
My month of hell was finally over. It was time for me to accompany Lady Russell on her annual trip to Bath, where I would join my family and can lose this bloody suitcase. Another month passed in Bath when I felt certain Captain Wentworth must be engaged to Henrietta, but I can't say for sure. Here in Bath, my father and sister are as charming as ever.
I understand the Crofts are in Bath. Pray, what brings them here?
I was told they come to take the waters. Is he thought to be gouty?
Gout and decrepitude. Poor old gentleman.
Have they any acquaintances here?
I wouldn't know, but I assume they have many acquaintances.
I suspect Admiral Croft would be best known in Bath as the renter of Kellynch. Elizabeth, my dear, may we venture to present them here in your place?
Oh, I think not. Situated as we are as Lady Dalrymple's cousins, we must not make any acquaintances she might not approve of and embarrass her. We best let the Crofts find their own level. There are a number of odd men about, who I am told are sailors. I understand that Captain Wentworth, that social climber, is in town.
Indeed. What on earth is he doing in Bath?
Probably visiting with his sister, Mrs. Croft. Captain Wentworth acquired a rather enormous fortune during the last war, and his society is now sought everywhere. He was very popular at Uppercross and is clearly seen there as a gentleman. I suspect we will soon be invited to a wedding at Uppercross if Henrietta Musgrove has her way.
Mary did write recently, didn't she, Elizabeth? I hardly ever read her correspondence, but I believe she said something about the Musgrove girl being settled with... I can't recall the name.
Hayden, I believe, local clergyman or something, has a good living somewhere. And dear, whatever is the matter?
Dear Henrietta is going to marry Mr. Hayden. How wonderful!
Yes, if you say so. Now, Lady Dalrymple is about to call, and if you cannot get a hold of yourself, we simply will not present you.
Well, Father, I had best excuse myself then, for I am not certain I can control my emotions.
Henrietta Musgrove was to be married, but not to Lieutenant Wentworth, which at least created the possibility for a second chance.
Ah, Miss Elliot. Just what we require to present the proper sex. Me and Wentworth were just discussing men and women and how they deal with rejection. I was just telling her how all the songs and proverbs speak of a woman's fickleness when they lose a man. But perhaps you would say those were written by men.
I hope I do justice to all men. I should deserve utter contempt if I dared to suppose that all true attachment and constancy were known only to women. I believe that men are capable of everything great and good, so long as they have an object. I mean, while the woman the man loves is available and lives for him, all is well. But once the woman is gone, I'm afraid the man often becomes cynical, even bitter.
Yes, but what say you of your own sex? Are the songwriters and poets correct or not? Is a woman fickle when it comes to the lot of a man?
All the privilege I claim for my own sex is that of loving the longest, when existence or when hope is gone.
I'm at my intellectual depth here, Miss Elliot. But lovely chatting with you. My best to your family. Wentworth, I'm off.
And please do not say that a man forgets. Tell me that I am not too late. I have been half agony and half hope ever since I returned from sea. I could not express my feelings towards you because I could not define what they were.
It seemed at Uppercross all you expected of me was friendship. You had poor Henrietta, your lady love, did you not?
Henrietta Musgrove was an empty-headed child who I never had a bit of interest in.
You could have fooled me and all Uppercross for that matter.
If anyone thought more of my politeness, then I am sorry. I have returned to the neighborhood anxious about facing you again. I had imagined myself indifferent towards you.
Understandable, given the circumstances under which you were sent away.
Yes, but I was only angry, you see. Now it is perfectly clear to me that I loved you, that I still love you, and that I always will love you until the day I die. Please, tell me there is a second chance for us.
If I was wrong in yielding to persuasion once, it should be sufficient to say that I will not be persuaded from loving ever again.
That is lovely. It does mean you will be loving.
Of course it's you. You may kiss me.
And so, as in most fables, even the adult ones, things usually resolve along the lines of what we would like them to. Persuasion shall not disappoint, and Anne and her good Captain Wentworth, learning that second chances are possible, were married and lived happily ever after.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to congratulate you, one and all, on a simply marvelous presentation. Your carriages have been summoned, and we are preparing to bid you a good evening. We've only to decide a winner and present the reward. I do have a confession to make. I would like to introduce your judge for today's contest, my dear friend, Miss Jane Austen.
I would like to begin by congratulating you all. I blush at how my stories have been served so greatly through your work. To choose a favorite from among them would be like asking a mother to choose one from among her children. It cannot be done. You are all winners, and so I had Mr. Browning's baker do some magic of their own, and we have several slices of black forest cake suitable for sharing amongst us all. So, if the ladies would step forward and claim their just deserts, I will declare today to have been the winner, and a winner well done indeed.
Hear, hear!